I do have a question that I get asked all the time in regards to food. It's already something that you mentioned, Kevin, which is the feedlot. How do you look at the difference between grain finished cows versus grass finished cows? For most of our audience are already kind of pro, keto carnivore listening in. What do you tell people if somebody asks, like, well, do I have to do grass fed, grass finished? Do I have to buy from a rancher? Like, how do you explain that to people?
That's a great question, and I don't have a straight answer on it, but I'll give you one portion of the answer first, which is you can't tell me that ruminant animals with hoofs that roam the plains never ate grains, because grains naturally occur. So you can't give me that argument and say that they never were meant to do this. Well, they probably weren't meant to sit in a feedlot and have this ultra processed grain. I'll go by that, but you can't tell me they couldn't have grain. The next thing is, let's go into the methane argument. I'm making a little bit of argument for grain here, and I personally think that the jury is out, and we need to look more and how can we do grass finish a little better. But so if you look at, like, the longer that cow is alive, there are statistics that show that they put off some methane gas, and they take a lot of time, and they're economically challenging to raise for several years. If you try to grain finish them, you can finish that animal in about 2 years. If you try to grass finish them, you're adding about a year. And that's a lot of time and a lot of money that'll get passed on to the consumer. And you need to do that because you can't fatten them enough on grass, particularly lower non-supplemented. And I'm not, and I, now a different argument is, where are you getting the most healthy product that you as a consumer can put in your body? And I think largely, as you're looking at grass finish, you're going to get a healthier product. It may not be as fat, you may not have the marbling with that nice, really tender cut, but you're going to probably have a lot less toxic chemicals that were put in all sorts of things and processed stuff that animal ate, which is now not going to get passed on to you. But I also think, it takes, to finish an animal, you're looking at, you're going to have them in a freezer and age them when they're what's called on the rail, and you have a carcass in there, and they're going to basically be aging somewhere between 35 and 40 days, and maybe a little shorter in some scenarios, and they're going to be on a certain temperature, we'll just say 38 degrees. And we've kind of dialed that in as an industry over the line for mass production, not what we like to see, the thousands of animals being slaughtered a day in these places that look like hell. But when we've learned to do that, and we've learned what the consumer wanted, but now we have this niche of this grass finished that's coming up and gaining popularity. But considering each of these animals takes 2 years, and you're dialing in the last little bit with these last little things, I think the jury's out. And to really, like, what kind of grass? Can we use some protein supplementation? Can we do things to increase the marbling? Because every time you start the experiment, you got at least 2 years and sometimes 3 to finish with that animal.
So one other thing, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one other thing that Kevin and I both have been really exploring and very interested in terms of grass finishing is where you can't have the fodder grown because you don't have the water resources, you don't have the proper temperatures, etc. Because of an investment that we made in my investment firm that I was part of, we made investments in hydroponic vertical farming for people food. But translating that into something that would be made for food for cows.
We're exploring that now with, like, barley fodder, which has a high protein similar to alfalfa, is probably considered grass by whoever the grass-fed finished stamp person is, which that is another thing that's not defined. People say, I want unprocessed grass finished. Well, you know what? There's no big lobby right now that you get a stamp on it. There's a USDA, and it's that select choice or prime. But you don't get that. And so I would like to see that kind of merge, and it leads down another rabbit hole of the beef industry, which I'm a part of, and we just finished CattleCon this year, which is 8,500 people and a great event. But they know nothing about this keto carnivore world that's promoting beef, and it's just like, well, why are you passing ships in the night? Why are you not talking? Because you're both into the same thing, but you're not interested in each other. And I was like, and I'm really trying to, through the beef industry and through the NCBA and Angus Association, to try to raise awareness from the beef industry and also from carnivore keto folks that we're friends with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm friends with Dr. Peter Ballerstad, and I've had him on the show a few times, and we talked last year about exactly that. Like, he's going to low carb conferences and he goes to agronomy conferences, and like he keeps saying, like, you guys need to talk because you cow producers think you're producing something unhealthy. All of you could benefit from eating more of your own product, and you need to talk to the keto carnivore people, and they really want to talk to you. So,
Yes.
okay, so what I gathered from that was a very thoughtful answer, and I really appreciate that you mentioned trade-offs. There are always trade-offs, and it's not just gas. It could be land, it could be water. That time that you mentioned is a huge thing. A year more of resources for the same animal that might have a little bit less fat. And I'll give you a good example of this. This week, I'm very grateful. Our freezer is completely full. One of my wife's clients brought her over boxes of grass-fed cow that she had ordered, and she just did not want it anymore. Why didn't she want it? The taste. The taste is a little strong and it's very grassy. So she gave it away to us. My wife gave away one box. We filled our freezer with the other box. We cooked up a roast the other day. It's pretty strong. It's pretty gamey and grassy, and it's fine. But I also went to a warehouse store that was selling a New York strip that's about this big. I got it for $100. I sliced it up into 1.25 inch steaks. They gave me 15 steaks, conventionally raised, great price, and they are delicious. They are so good. And I can eat that every single day where I just don't necessarily have the taste for grass fed. So it sounds like we're on the same page as far as like, I would tell anybody, buy whatever meat that you enjoy, that you like, and you can afford. I think with ruminant agriculture, the difference in nutrition is maybe like a tiny bit different. And I just think with all the other trade-offs you have, to tell somebody that you need to go to Whole Foods, another show sponsor we're losing here, and buy the most expensive cuts of meat that are grass-fed, grass-finished, I think we're doing a disservice by telling people that.
Yeah, I'll quote Life by Jake. He's on Instagram. Great guy. He's a coach. He had a great comment that I'm giving him credit here, but I love to tell it to people. He's all, you can cure diabetes with hot dogs from the supermarket. And I'm like, you know what? I tell everything I've read. I think you're totally right. I think I don't want to just eat hot dogs, but I think it would work.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree. No, I love that. Jake is awesome. I got to hang out with him in Austin. He's a great guy. But yeah, I completely agree here. I just heard about cultures like, living in Okinawa, Japan, and after the war in the 70s, and they were eating tons of spam, but they didn't have the same like metabolic disease that is increasing around the world. So I think that's a great point, and I love that you make that point. So we've talked a bit about food. Let's talk about the farming. What are some misconceptions around the raising of agriculture, in particular cow farming? Pros and cons.
So, well, let's go back to I'll just give one more point to the grass finished. I'm a producer, and we do production cattle, which is I only really sell by the semi truck. And we don't have I want to go farm to table.
Maybe you talk about the phases. So
yeah, I think phases, I will.
Yeah.
But I'll get into that. But real quick, what I'll say is, in order for me to use the land that I have available, and if I were to go to grass finished, I would have to decrease my herd size dramatically. Basically, I would have to cut a third of them off and raise them longer. And now my profit margin just went way down. Now, are there other pullers and levers and things like that? Yes. So I do. So that's a hard thing to really do right. But getting into what Noel's point is, a lot of folks don't really understand the feedlots and the way these things work. And I mentioned it briefly earlier, but one of the cattle industry, a lot of folks look at it like, oh, and they see the feedlots and like, oh, that's bad. Look at all those thousands and thousands of cattle. And I'm not making an argument for them. But what I will say is a lot of the industry is controlled in a very negative way by what's called the Big Four. And that's Carhill, Tyson, American Beef, and missing one. National Beef.
And JBS.
And JBS. Yeah. So those are the Big Four. And they control 85% of all beef that is sold and processed in the United States.
And 2 of them are foreign.
Yeah, they're foreign entities. And because of the size of that market, they are able to basically price control. And in my opinion, there's a lot of corporate greed up there that really kind of dictates it, because you have a lot of very wealthy people at the top of those huge organizations. I mean, you could just imagine the CEO of Tyson's probably is doing okay, I'm guessing. But it's hard to find a family farm or ranch where they're not struggling. In fact, In fact, my grandfather, who started our cattle ranch, he said, "You go get a real job, because you need to weather a couple seasons if there's drought or anything, because no one's going to be here to protect you." And so if you want this to sustain, you need to find other income sources to come in. And sadly, I think he's right in a lot of ways. And I'm trying to change that, but it's slow, and it goes on. But then, so we got these big four things, and what they kind of control a lot of the way we work. Their lobbies in Congress are huge, and they're very, very, very powerful, and they set the way things do, such as transporting food across state line and doing all that. And you mentioned buying a quarter cow. And the only way you can really effectively do that now is you do these little co-ops where, hey, you got 4 people, they're just going to buy a quarter of this cow. And then you can't, me as a producer, I can't sell you a hamburger. You have to have a USDA inspector there. You have to pay for their office, make sure they have all the ADA compliance issues for wheelchairs and life insurance, and especially it's very expensive and prohibitive. So, but what you can do is I can sell, hey, you and you, I'm going to sell you this cow as a portion, and then it's effectively yours. And then you say, hey, now I think I got a good idea where I could butcher it. And you're just along for the ride. Okay, well, sure, you're butchering this, and you're scratching it. I don't know. Okay, what am I? But it has to be your decision, because you now own the cow, and they're controlling the process. But it's the only way you can really skirt those regulations that are federal and state, and different from state to state. But now going back to the way that the business works, so you have generally a cow calf producer like it's me, and you raise teenage cows, and you sell primarily steers, but you're going to sell some heifers. And they'll go off on a semi truck, and they'll end up somewhere where there's brighter pastures. A lot of ours go to California, or some go to Nebraska, and they go to a stalker. They're in a stalker for about a year, where they just get fat, and they live a wonderful life out on a beautiful pasture, and they're largely left alone. Then they go to the feedlot. And so you see these pictures of these feedlots, which do not look good, and they're largely controlled by those big four. And they don't look that pretty, and they don't look comfortable, but the cow is really only there about a month, or maybe a little longer. Yeah, it's a really spending a very, 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 very limited time of their life there. And then they go to the packing plant and turn into hamburger and what have you. But that's, I think Noel just wanted to, because a lot of people don't understand how the whole process sequentially works.
Yeah, why couldn't you buy a cow from
I can't sell
you can't.
I'm a cattle rancher. I can't sell you a cow.
Yeah, because they have
so bizarre.
Yeah, they have to go through the rest of the process that's dictated kind of by the overarching meat
industry. All the rules, title code, this, that, C-section, whatever. It's like,
yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. There's the one feedlot that everybody talks about that's in California, and it's right next to like a highway, and so tons of people pass it. And I think everybody just gets the idea that this is what raising cows is like, when that's just not the case.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. Well, it's obviously, I can't tell you your eyes are lying, but that's not where most of those cattle live most of their life. Most of the vast 80 to 90% of their life, they were being left alone by humans, probably somewhere you couldn't even see a car, and doing their cow thing.
Wow.
Yeah, not an argument for the feedlots. I'd like to see it come down to more local consumer oriented and knowing where your food comes. I'd like to see and I think there's some trends that are happening, but I'd like to see the beef industry switch more to that and make it a doable thing. Because right now there's the closest plant to me is I'm looking at trying to go farm to table for at least a portion of our herd. But it looks like I'm going to have to ship these animals somehow to Idaho. I'm going to have to do things up there. I'm going to have to get them cut up, and I'm going to have to bring them back and have them packaged somewhere in Nevada. I'm talking lots of logistics, and it's very cumbersome. And okay, how can I make this financially viable and give a healthy product to consumers that want it? And we're moving it. We're hoping to be there at least this year, and do things like jerky that you could make easier packaged and make it a little easy, and start to figure these logistical chains out to get our friends a better product. But anyway, it's hard.